Hey, welcome back. Today we are going to continue working on the Making a Hand in Maya project. And today we're actually going to add the textures to it to kind of get rid of this fake looking skin thing that I did, which is just some materials I threw on it and colored them. And we're going to pull in some textures and make it look a little bit more realistic, hopefully. All right, so if you're just now joining us and you want to kind of catch up or see what we've done, how we made the hand, there are some videos available on my YouTube channel, Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization. Go there, check them out, and if you like what you see, please like the videos and subscribe. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so what we're going to do is a few things. We got to get this model finished up and prepped. I have my UVs opened over here on the right hand side. I've docked them over here on the right as a tab so we can pull them up and we can kind of click through all of these. And wrong one. There it is. So what we're going to do first is we need to kind of prep this, okay? So if you remember, we have already done the UV and we've applied two different materials to the model itself. We have a material for the skin textures and we have a material for the fingernails, okay? But if we take a look at the viewport here, our hand is currently looks smooth, but this is just a preview, okay? When we hit the 3 button on the keyboard, all it does is kind of gives us a preview of what it's going to look like. It's not a permanent thing that's done on the hand, okay? Let me go ahead and get my head out of the way so we can take a look at this. So if I hit 1, it goes back to being its boxy kind of basic view here, right? So what we want to do now is make it so that we actually have a permanent smoothing on this hand. And we're going to do that by going up to the top here and going to our mesh, okay? And under mesh, there is smooth. So let's select the little option box here and take a look at this. So we can decide how many division levels we want to apply to our hand to kind of smooth it out. I'm going to start with division level number 1, and I'm going to leave everything else pretty much default. This is going to be the best, I think, version of what we want, okay? And now when we do this, it is also going to modify our UVs over here on the right hand side. So let's take a look and see what happens here. So I'm going to hit smooth, okay? And now my hand has a much more permanent, well, it has a permanent smoothing to it unless I Control Z to undo it because I don't like it or something. But overall, I think this will do just fine, okay? And if we take a look at the UVs, you can see, and also the model itself, we have a significant number of additional edges, so more geometry added to our hand. And we can also kind of see that here in our UVs, okay? And it didn't deform anything. If we hit the little checkerboard here again, we can see that our squares should still look like squares and shouldn't be deformed in any additional way, okay? And that looks pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that off. Let's go up here to edit, and we're going to delete by type history with our hand selected. I'm going to modify transformations just one more time. It probably is all right, but we'll just do it just out of habit. And now let's go up to File, and we're going to save our scene, okay? Now, one thing occurs to me that we haven't done is check to make sure that we have our project set. So let's go to File. We're going to go to Set Project, and we may have to resave it if we didn't save it in the right spot, of course. So right now, it's opened up to my projects on my separate hard drive, and this should be in my Hand Project 2022, actually my Demo 2022, and I'm going to go ahead and set that. And now it should save in there. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to Export Selection. We're going to export this as an FBX, okay? So down here, we're going to select FBX Export, and then over here, you're going to scroll down a little bit until you find the title that says Embedded Media. Hit the little down arrow and put a checkbox, a check mark in this box right here for Embedded Media, all right? And now we need to give it a name. I'm going to just save over the top of this one right here. And then I'm going to say export selection. Now this is one I had done earlier while I was going through this process. So this one is actually not smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and say export selection, and I'm going to write over it. You may have to write your own new project, okay? All right, so now with that done, we have it done. So let's go ahead and open up Mixer. I have mine already opened up, so you may need to pause because I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into this. I already have a project, so if you don't have a project, hit the plus button right here and give it a name, okay? And I named mine Hand Demo, right? And we want it to go into that project, so create a new project. So hit the plus button right here, and then give it a name, all right? Mine happens to be Hand Demo. You can call it whatever you want. Now you have that done, you're going to have to add a new mix. So I'm going to hit the plus button here, and this particular model is my hand left. So that's what I'm going to call it, my hand left. All right, so that is going to open up Mixer, and this is the default page, and it's taking us to our setup. Hopefully that's where it took yours. And right here at the top it says Model Settings, Type. Right now we see the plane, so this is the default setup for Quixel when it first opens up, usually, unless you've changed it. And then here where it says plane, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to select Custom Model. And when you select Custom Model, it'll open up your projects, okay? Mine is in my project from Maya. I'm going to find my hand left right here. I'm going to select that. I'm going to click Open. And here is our smooth hand, okay? And now when we take a look at this, okay, we see that the hand is here. It's got these little checkerboards on it. But the fingernails on mine look like they're see-through. So let's take a look at this, okay? We go over to layers, and we see that my hand is checked. I have two things under my layer set. I have hand, and I have fingernail, right? So if I click on the fingernail, put a checkbox in it, they both pop up here, okay? And this is my layer set 1. Okay, so both of my models are in here. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to start adding textures to this, okay? The first thing I'm going to work with is the hand itself. So we can do this a couple different ways. I have my layer set, which is this layering right here. We can add an additional layer to this for the skin, and we could rename it. So let's, on the very top, I'm going to double click this where it says layer set. And I'm going to just kind of call this hands underscore left for mine. And I'm going to just name it that. And I think I'm going to want to add an additional layer to this. So I'm going to click on and add another layer. And this one is going to just be, I'm going to put it underneath that one. And this one's just going to be made up of my hand. So this is just going to be hand. And if you want to differentiate, you could also say specifically what it is. This is going to be my skin, okay? And then we'll do an additional layer when we get that far. And actually, maybe I'll just go ahead and do it now. We'll get it all set up. So I'm going to do an additional layer for my fingernails. So I'm going to click another one. I'm going to drag this down underneath the skin here. If it lets me, there we go. Double click on it, and I'm just going to call this fingernails. Okay. And this one, I will turn off the hand and just turn on fingernails for that one. So now this one will show the entire hand. This one will be the skin only, and this one will be the fingernails only as we start to work. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to select the hand here, the one that says hand skin. And what I'm going to do is, I've kind of worked through this a little bit. I'm going to use smart materials. Now, when you first installed Quixel Mixer, if you're installed it on your own computer, you should have had the option at the very beginning when you went to install it, a bunch of checkboxes that had to do with materials, right? So these kind of bulk materials, they're called smart materials. And let's just let me double check to make sure they're in my local library as I talk. So I'm going to click on my local library, and down here as I go down and look at this, there should be a bunch of materials that are already included that kind of came with the install. One of those is this down here called Smart Materials. I'm going to put a checkbox there, and the Smart Materials look kind of like this, okay? And what they are is they are textures, materials that have been kind of combined to create a specific type of look, okay? And what I want to do is I'm going to find one. So there's not really one in here that is just like normal skin, right? So with it selected, if I type up here skin, we'll get some that pop up. And we got this silicone skin, an embossed silicone skin, a clean silicone skin, a football skin, and then we have this organic head crab skin, which is kind of funky. And then I thought there was also like some sort of an alien skin or something like that, or a creature. But anyway, we're not going to use those. We're going to use these ones called silicone skin. And we can take a look at the different ones here and decide which one you want to use. And then we can also modify these as we go along, which is what we're going to do. Okay. So with the hand selected, I'm going to go ahead and first take a look at this one right here, the silicone skin. I think we may end up with the clean silicone skin so we can modify it ourselves. But let's take a look and see what this silicone skin kind of looks like. Okay. So I'm going to select it. And when I select it, it drops it down here under my hand layer. And then it starts to fill it up, and you can see that this one's got a lot of imperfections in it, and it is also kind of like I mean, it really has gone out and made it look like silicone, right? And you know, this doesn't really tell us a lot because it's very large. So what we could do is we could hit the little down arrow over here, and then if we find the base skin and take a look here on the right hand side. So we click on base skin, and on the right hand side, this will give us our area that we can modify these materials, all right? So I'm going to hit the placement, and the scale right now is 1. So I'm going to make this really kind of small and go with 0.07 to kind of really drop down the amount of imperfections on it, give it kind of a smaller scale. And some of these other ones have stayed on here because we didn't... obviously, we haven't gone in and shrunk those as well. But the overall skin that had all the bumps and creases in it, that kind of, you know, this isn't really what I'm looking for. I'm going to try to make this hand look a little bit more realistic. But if you're going for maybe a mannequin look or maybe a zombie type look, this might actually be something that will work for you. Okay. But not really what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go back here, and I can select it up here at the top. And then down here at the bottom, I can delete that layer. And it goes away. Okay, so now we're back to just the bare hand the way it was. So I'm going to go back to my local library. And one of the things about the smart materials is you can't get them online. There is no ability to download these online. So if you don't have them already installed when you first did your install, you're going to need to go back in and reinstall Mixer and then include these at the very beginning, series of check boxes. And this will increase the amount of time it takes to install Mixer significantly, especially depending on your bandwidth. So keep that in mind, okay? So if you're working on this project on campus at my school and you do not see your smart materials, please let me know. And I will take a look at why yours aren't showing up, because they are installed on the computer. We just may need to do a little bit of looking around to change your path so we can see it. All right? All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and jump on over to the embossed silicone skin and take a look to see what that is. So I'm going to select it. Again, it's with my hand skin selected. It's going to pop up over here. And this also has some significant amount of objects, I guess, deformation on it. And again, same thing. I'm going to just click on the little down arrow over here, select the base skin, and go into my placement. And the scale is already set down to 0.5 on this one, but I'm going to go to 0.05 on this one. Just kind of get a look, and that's still pretty big. So let's try maybe even 0.01. And so some of this, it looks like it's probably maybe this base skin here as well. 0.05 maybe. Yeah, okay, that really shrunk it down too much. And that's one of the things you got to also look out for is repetitiveness on the tiling. And that's what we have kind of going on here. So maybe 0.5. Okay, so, and this isn't really a look I'm wanting to go with anyway. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to figure this one out. But you can see that this one, again, if I jump it back up to 0.5, This one has got some unique structure to it as well. Again, it may be something that may work out for your model. Depending on what it is you're trying to do, this may be another good kind of a zombie approach. And we certainly could, with what I'm going to show you here in this lesson, you may be able to take this and, I don't know, make some modifications and changes here to make it so that this skin looks a little bit more dead and decaying. All right, so this is not one we're going to use, so I'm going to go ahead and select that and hit delete on that layer as well. So the last one that I have here out of the silicone skin is this one right here, is the clean one. And again, with our hand selected here, it's going to drop in there. And this does have some additional deformation in the skin, some bumps and creases and all. But this one's going to work for us based on the coloring and the amount of wear and tear on it. And you can see that some of this wear and tear that's on here is stuff that we can actually take off or modify elsewhere on the hand. And yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and hit this down arrow. Okay. And again, I'm going to change the skin scale down on the base silicone itself. And I may not need to do this, but let's just see what is all in effect here. And another way we can also decide what all is making some of this look on our hand is we can turn some of these things on and off. So here's something called edge wear, right? So edge wear focuses on the edge of the model, and it determines a certain amount of wear based on that. So we can turn that off. And since this hand is mostly got curves and round edges on it, it's not going to probably make a lot of different changes here. You can turn on and off and see. This one's cavities and dust. We probably don't want cavities and dust really because it's a hand. Color variation, we may want to leave that for right now. Now this one called Wrinkles is what's causing these effects here, I believe. So we can turn that off. And that's going to take that mostly off. And on the hand itself, because it's supposed to be like a mannequin or robot type skin being silicone based, we can see that we have some wear and tear here, which I really don't want to have show up on that. And that might be, again, these height details. And it is. All right. So that kind of gets rid of that for us. Now it makes the hand look very, very kind of smooth, which is okay, but you know, depending on the level of realism or how close you're going to get to the hand, you may want to change it up a little bit. You may want to add something else to it, and also kind of determine about color variation and the color of the hand. This is kind of lighter skin colored, but one of the things we can do is over here with the base silicone selected, and we also have color variation, which we can come in and play with too. Over on the right hand side, we have this one called albedo, right? So if you wanted to change the color of this skin, we can click on albedo on the little circle here, click on it. And what we can do is move this around to change the selection of the color here. Okay, and it's possible to kind of get it really a lot darker if you wanted to. Okay, and you can say apply, and it's going to change that. But we still have kind of some funky coloring variation happening here. So that is due to color variation here. So we can select this one, and now that it's highlighted, all of the attributes that deal with the color variation are in here. And again, you can play around with the scale of this. I'm not dissatisfied with the way this variation scale looks right now, so I'm going to leave it at 1, I think. But I am going to change the color of it to make it a little bit darker, since it's way too light for the skin tone that we're working with right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of play around until I get a little bit closer to the skin color that I was working with to begin with, and I'm going to say apply. So now I have a variation between my base silicone and my color variation here that isn't so bad, okay? And it's actually looking pretty decent. Now, if wrinkles were something you wanted to include on your hand, we could click on it And I'll go through this real quick so we can kind of take a look at it. And we can kind of play around with it a little bit. The wrinkles also have a color variation on them, so you can play around with that coloring. But we can play around with the scale like we saw before, so maybe we don't want them to be so big. Okay. And maybe we want to change the orientation of it on the hands. So we could play around with this, okay? And as you can see, I can move this in and out, and it kind of changes and moves around on the hand a little bit. We can also grab the tilt and change the tilt, and that's going to change the direction or the angle that it's facing on the hand as well. Okay, and something like that, maybe 90. So I'm going to click in here and say 90. We could also go the opposite direction, 180. And then again, we can play around with the center point here and change where those are facing. Okay, that's going to cause some wrinkling in the hands, and it may not be something you're really wanting, especially here on the fingertips. It doesn't really look so great. So if I turn those off, again, that's something you can play around with. We can even make the scale even smaller. Okay, and that kind of does get rid of some of that, but then we get a lot of repetitiveness on some of it, but that may be something you're looking for. It does kind of add some imperfections into the tips of the fingers, maybe a little bit more realism. So you can kind of play around with that. Okay. All right, so again, there are a ton of things you can do here inside of Quixel. A bunch of different things you can add to all of this, such as noise and things like that. So this edge wear, if we were, actually let's take a look at the wrinkles. So if I click on this right here, I click on this little square for the wrinkles, it shows you the break mask that it's using, and then these edges and how it determines where the particular wrinkles should go. So let's go back in. I'm going to click back on the main one here. I'm going to scale these back up so they're a little bit more visible. Okay, something like that. And if we go back into this, basically it's kind of a noise projection that we have on here with these edges. We can kind of play around with some of the settings in here. All right, you can play around with the tightness on it, how much the wrinkles pop up. Okay, and you can kind of see how the settings change the way they look on the hand. We can also set, there's a level, so it has a minimum and a maximum. You can change this, okay, so that it becomes more apparent, okay. And we can smooth it out, and you can even make it larger to give you more smoothness areas, and that's also going to affect how it's appearing here on the end of our fingertips, okay. And you can set the low level, high level, okay. So you can kind of play around with it until you kind of got the look you wanting to go for. And again, it also depends on how you want this hand to look. Is it a zombie hand? Is it a young person's hand? Is it an older person's hand? Is it a dead hand? I don't know. Anyway, so those are the things you got to think about when you're kind of playing around with this. We can change how it mixes together, right? So we can keep it on this current top level. You know, is the hand heavily scarred? And so, you know, I guess my best advice is to just kind of jump in and play with some of these on these smart materials and see how they affect your hand and go for looks that you want, and play around with the settings. You can always delete it and then just re-enter the smart material to get it back fresh and clean, and then modify it the way you want to. All right, so you know, and you can apply it to just specific areas depending on how these various mixes are set up. All right. Really, I think I kind of undid that one by changing the edges only. All right, so again, I'm not going to use the wrinkles. Now, there is something else we could do. Now, because I'm kind of wanting to try to add something that looks a little bit like pores on a hand, if you take a look at your hand, you know, you kind of do have some wrinkles on it, and you have variation. So coming back to the wrinkles, maybe something you want to play with. I'm going to skip ahead from that real quick and go with something else that I'm going to show you. So we can go to this online tab here, okay? And we can look at all these different settings here. Okay, and on the left-hand side, we can choose types, so surfaces, brushes, atlases, and 3D, right? So 3Ds are models. We're not going to mess with that right now. Surfaces are these type of materials here, so like where these spheres are, those are the surfaces. Atlases are things like, well, let's click on that real quick. So things like this, you know, these little, I guess, like graffiti or tattoos, those type of things. Atlases are also the small stuff in our brush for 3D models and things like that. So we're not going to use those, so I'm going to go ahead and jump back into all types real quick. What I am looking for is one of two things, either displacements or imperfections. So let's jump onto imperfections for a second. These are the types of things that you can also add in to kind of change the way your model is behaving, right? And so we can add like stains and overlays, dust, and those type of things. So I think in order to kind of show the way this works, I'm going to grab something that kind of might add some imperfections to the skin level. So something like stains, right? So I'm going to select that, download it. Okay, and then once it's downloaded, I guess I need to go to my local library and find my imperfections. And check my smart materials. All right, come on. Oh. Helps to get rid of the search. This was the last one I just did, the stains one. So I'm going to select it, okay? And it's going to add these stains. And right here, I have it kind of stuck here in the middle. Where you place it on your hand is going to determine kind of how it looks on the hand itself, all right? So now I've kind of got this kind of like some skin tone or irritations going on. And again, we can play around with scale. We can also play around with its positioning on our hand until we get the look we're looking for. Maybe we want it to be a little bit further back here on the hand itself. We have height influences. Right now there's no albedo color to this. We could add that to it if we wanted to, and maybe of course that's really going to change the way things look here. What we would need to do is we would need to create a mask to get it to only affect the areas that we wanted it to. So we'll go ahead and cancel on that, take that off. The other thing we could do is kind of leave it the way it is, I guess. We can change the scale, like I said, until we get a look that we're looking for. Okay. So you can kind of play around with these different looks, these different imperfections to change and add things onto your hand. Okay. We can also play around with height influences. So if we wanted to play around with displacement perhaps, or normals. Okay, let's actually try displacements. You can see it gets crazy really fast. Okay, of course this is also going to show my seams, it looks like. Anyway, so again, you can kind of play around until you get a look that you're looking for based off of these different imperfections here on the online. You can also have them in your local library. There'll be some in your local library as well. And there's all different kinds that you can play around with until you kind of look for something that you want. I am going to delete that one. Okay. So go back to my viewport. What else? All right. So what if we wanted to have a different type of material underlying all of this? So let's go to online again, and let's take a look at. Let's see here. Let's go to brush surfaces rather. Okay, and instead of just imperfections, let's take a look at fabrics maybe. And there was actually. So this leather kind of has a kind of a octagonal look to it that kind of makes it look almost synthetic, right? So we can download it, and this one is called leather. So I'm going to go back to my local library. It should be up at the top. And here it is here. So if I add it in, okay. Now if I put it all the way down here below everything, you can see that it gives a synthetic look. Everything above it overrides the coloring, but the displacements, because there's nothing else on the displacements overriding it, this one shows up here. And what we could do is really kind of shrink that down, maybe too much. We can start to kind of add some deformation to the skin, kind of give it some look that you're looking for. There's other textures and materials that you could use for this. There was a sci-fi one that has a bunch of perforated holes in it that might work well. If you shrink it down and apply it, it might work out pretty well. And let me see, go a little larger. That's too much. Okay, so we could kind of play around with the scale, and then the height influence on this, we can kind of drop that down a little bit, perhaps. Let's see here. And this might actually be under displacement. Drop the displacement strength down to and that's not going to do it either. What else do we have? Oh, here we go. The normals. So we play around with the normals until we drop it down a little bit further. So you can kind of play around with it until you get a look that you're kind of going for. Try to make it look a little bit more skin-like. And then the albedo color on it, we can kind of play around with that a little bit. Of course, the coloring isn't going to be so significant on here. Because it's, again, it's buried under everything else down here. And then maybe we do add the wrinkles back in a little bit and play around with the wrinkles till we get the look we want. Okay, so that's kind of got us started a little bit. One other thing we may want to do is kind of paint on this a little bit, right? So we have the ability to add some paint to this. Up here, there is a add a paint layer, so I'm going to go up to the very top. And since I'm not using these for this, we could select them and delete them, get them out of the way. I'm not going to add any dust to it, I don't believe. I am keeping the color variations. I am playing around with the wrinkles. The height details, We might leave that for now and maybe come back to that. You can play around with that. So I'm going to take those out. I'm going to click all the way up here to the very top. Add a solid layer to this here. Select a solid layer where we can add the color. I'm going to right click on this and we're going to add a paint mask. Okay. And let me add, let me change the color to this real quick. So for my albedo, I am going to maybe go with a skin color that's a little darker brown. Okay. And let's see here. Back to this paint mask. So with this, we could add some imperfections, and we can paint some of that stuff in if we wanted to. We could add some additional coloring. We could go with this darker color and then remove it as we go along to get down to the lighter color. We can also, since the hand is kind of all uniform color down here underneath, typically, you know, the back of the hand is going to be darker than the underside of the hand. So something like this would be useful for adding a lighter color. So going with the darker color on top for this solid, and then exposing the lighter color that we have for our color variation down underneath. And you can kind of paint this in and get this so you can see it. Okay. All right, so let's talk about kind of hard to see this down here. So right now we're on Desert Road. That's pretty bright. If we go to 2D view, we can kind of see the way our UVs are laid out, and we can find that bottom of the hand that we were just working on. And these are the bottom sides of the fingers here. Okay, for this finger, and then this finger here. So we could use our 2D and kind of paint this out, being careful not to hit our 3D. Okay. Okay, so we keep painting this. But let me go ahead and talk about the settings over here, okay? So over here on the left-hand side for these brushes, okay, we have these different brushes to pick from. That's not very many, but we can add more, right? And then we can go between painting to erasing. So this would be erase anything that you put in, okay? And then over here you can adjust the size of your brush. Right now it's set at 50. I can go much larger. I can go smaller. Okay. You can change the angle that you're painting at. Also the spacing of the way the brush paints. Opacity, so your opacity and your flow. Right now mine are set at 100, but if you just kind of wanted to feather things in, you can play around with your opacity and flow for that. You can change the brush shape here and how it works, softness, your center curve, base curve. You can also adjust the way that the jitter works on it, and then change brush value, so between black and white. So we could invert this if we wanted to. Again, if I invert it, so I could pick a different color for my inversion. We're just going to go ahead and leave it black, and this would be the change in value from somewhere in between. So if I wanted to kind of only erase a little bit as I go, or if I wanted to erase all of it, okay, as I go along. Even though I'm painting, you can see that here, because of my brush color, whether it's black, so black is to paint, somewhere in between starts to remove a little bit, depending on the whether it's closer to the white or it's closer to the black value, determines what we end up doing here. And then again all the way to the white, and it will remove. Okay, so that's kind of the brush settings there. And I'm going to go ahead and pause for a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and paint up my hand, and I'm going to then show you what I've got, and then we'll jump on over to the fingernails real quick and take a look at the fingernails, okay? Okay, so this is kind of where I'm at right now. What I did is I used the 2D first to kind of paint in the solid for the backside for the underside of the hand, so the palm and underside of the fingers, right? And then what I did is I went back and I used the solid one first over here. I used this solid one and I painted it in, and then I went back with this softer brush and I kind of made some adjustments here on my opacity, and I used this brush value color down here, and I kind of went back in and I kind of rounded around the edges of the fingers and the hand, and then I went back into the 2D view, or 3D view rather, and I started kind of cleaning up where some of this kind of fell over, right? And again, using this brush, I kind of started painting away some of these hard edges and kind of blending them in so that it's not as noticeable, right? And did that around all the spots of the hand where I could get to it. One of the things about the lights, so I didn't really talk much about that, and the way this tool works, is it centers around wherever your mouse is put. So if you click here, hold the Alt button down, and kind of rotate around, it'll stay in that one spot, right? But as soon as you move it and do it somewhere else, it's going to change the center point. So it rotates wherever you had last placed your cursor, okay? Other thing under display over here, you can change the background look and how it kind of looks here. But here's where you can also change the light intensity. You also have a shadow resolution, which you can control, turn off. Light rotation, so this will change the way the light is on the model, so you can kind of see. You can increase the amount of light until it's very bright or very dim based off of what you're trying to do. Those are the kind of the big things. So here I'm going to show you a little bit more about this blending I was trying to do. So using the blending process to try to kind of blend in the two colors. And the other thing I did is on the layers, I took this paint layer, this solid layer that we added in, and I put it underneath the color variation layer so that we still have that variation popping in as well. And we're also kind of painting over the top of that one. Well, I guess actually that one's going to be visible over the top of our paint that we're doing. So we still have our variation on the back of the hands, around the knuckles and things like that. But this painting that we're doing now is going to kind of blend in around that. You can just kind of, oops, again, just kind of move this around a little bit. The controls for this, if I didn't get into that earlier, are the same as in Maya. So you can kind of play around until you get the skin tone texturing the way you want it to look. And I still think my texturing on my skin is not really what I want it to be. I'm going to just leave those wrinkles off, I think. And you can just kind of play around with coloring and painting. You can even put multiple layers in here if you want. So I'm just going to call this one Flesh Brown. And kind of, like I said, you can continue in and add more of these if you wish to be able to kind of adjust the coloring, whatever color skin tone you're trying to go for, and those type of things. And this is really kind of big still with that leather, so I think I'm going to pull that out a little bit more. Maybe even turn it off, I'm not sure. I think I'm just going to leave that off. Let's kind of go with what we got here. All right, so that's kind of that process of getting the skin in here, kind of painting all of that in. Now let's go ahead and take a look for the process of doing the fingernails. All right, so I'm going to select the fingernails. You notice everything else will shut off. And for this, I'm going to kind of want something's kind of semi-shiny. So what is that, semi-gloss or you know, something like that. So again, I'm going to go to the local library. I'm going to try to find something in the smart materials that might work. So it's something kind of plastic. And find a color that might kind of work maybe to begin with. This beige might be good. But we also kind of have this transparent type of look on our nail as well. So you can kind of dig through until you find something you're looking for. And some of these smart materials also have some additional masks and things like that that you can use and try to use that might add a skin effect that you're looking for. You can strip everything else out of it and just use that. I think the one I want to use for this, though, we may be able to modify this, is going with this stained plastic beige, perhaps, for our fingernails. Okay? And once that feeds in, kind of get this this look on them. I'm going to pick one to kind of play around with. Maybe the thumbnail might be the best one to go with, just because of the angle that it's at. And again, if you hold the right mouse button down and the Alt button, it's just like Maya. It'll pull that in. Let's go ahead and jump back up to the top one, just kind of see how this looks together. All right, so let's go back down here. Click the down arrow for this stained plastic one. Let's see here and kind of turn some things off and see what it looks like for us. Okay, color variation. And then we have our base plastic. All right, so with the base plastic, we have this kind of albedo, displacement, normals, occlusion, opacity. Let's try clicking on opacity for that. And now we got to remember we don't actually have any base color of the skin underneath it. So that might be something we may need to come back in and add. But let's try playing around with opacity a little bit and see if that does anything for us, if it even allows us. It doesn't look like it has an opacity on it. So we could possibly... So at the very top, there is this opacity right here that we can use to kind of make this a little bit more transparent. And if we're going to use that for the overall material as a whole, we are going to need to add in, because you can see there's nothing underneath there, we're going to need to add a material to this as well. So this is maybe a good opportunity for us to come up here, go back to our hand, and find that flesh brown that we had, and we can right click on it and we can duplicate that layer. Okay, so now we have two of them. I'm going to drag this one down and put it down here at the base of my plastic one, right, for my hand. So it's not going to be visible. And also when we do that, because it's for this hand instead of for the... I don't know if we actually need to have this paint mask on here. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to delete that paint mask for the skin, because we're not going to paint it, obviously. We're just going to use this color. Now if I go back and start to kind of make my nail a little bit more clear, does it show up? No. There we go. Okay. But let's see here. Okay, that'll work. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of use this, and we're going to actually leave the plastic one at its full opacity of at full strength of 1. We're going to drop this fingernail one color here until we kind of see the skin underneath it, right? So kind of make that a little bit more transparent. Try to match the color of our fingernails to our hand and maintain some of that wear and tear on here. We could also put some paint masks in if you wanted to, and we can kind of give it some more detail on the cuticles down in here. So you could paint this section in here. So we could, let's see, that would be best if we put it probably up here under this, and then we can also control the transparency on that as well. So if we made another paint layer, so we click on here and make a add paint layer, okay? And actually, this isn't the style that I want. Let me delete that one. I'm just going to duplicate this, I think. So again, right click, we're going to duplicate that layer. And with this one, we can change the color on it since it's already painted. And we're going to kind of go for more of a kind of a lighter color, brownish, that goes with what we have already. And we can, it's already matching the opacity of the layer underneath it, I believe. Let's see here. Kind of play around with it till we get the darkness that we want of it. And now what we can do is we can remove paint here, and actually we are going to need to be this paint layer. So we're going to go ahead and let's right click on it, and we're going to add a paint mask on it. Okay. And using this paint mask, what we're going to do is we're going to remove material, right? So to remove material is the white, and we're just going to kind of paint on it. So we're going to probably need to see it a little bit better. All right, sorry, it's not white, it's black. We're going to remove that color. We take a look at our fingernail. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to repeat this kind of color variation that happens in our fingernail, right? So across here, kind of like this. Kind of get this curve, so I have this section remaining down here. And the brush I'm using is I'm kind of using this soft one, so it kind of gives this blend effect into it. And now I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of this so I can more rapidly remove the material I don't want. I may need to add strength to it too, but okay. I'm also going to leave it across the very tip of the nail up there. You may need to rotate the nail around a little bit, so remember, kind of want to center it there. Okay, and you're probably going to need to do this on all the nails because this is only working on the thumbnail. All the nails will need to have this done to it, but once I show this process real quick to you, it'll make a little bit more sense, and you can apply this. And I'll just go ahead and pause for a minute, work on mine while you work on yours. If I look at my nail, there's also kind of this additional, you know, there's like little bumps and scratches and kind of this color variation around the edges and kind of at the tip. So it doesn't have to be perfectly removed. You can kind of play with it until you get the look you want. And then again, you can also select the whole nail and kind of play around with this opacity until it gets down to the look you want. Something like that. Let's take a look at the whole hand. Okay. I'm not sure that the skin color is exactly the way I want it, but we're getting close. Okay. And you can kind of see the process, and that may be something you got to do on all the nails. And you may need to find a color that's exactly what you want based off the skin tone that you're working with. Okay, so that's kind of the nail process. And if we take a look here, it's kind of hard to tell because it's so small, but as we start to work these, we're creating a mask where it's adding and subtracting the materials based off of our mask here. And if we go to our 2D view, you'll start to see. So here is the hand. These are where the fingernails are. And you can see right there, that's kind of what we painted in there. You could also do that on this section here and kind of paint them out until you get the general look you want. And then from there, go in and kind of fine tune it on your on the actual model where you can actually see what's happening. Okay, so again, you can just kind of do it like this. It might be easier for you to kind of manipulate everything and get the look you want from here initially, and then, like I said, fine tune it a little bit. Don't worry about going off here because this is not part of the model, so we're going to be okay. All right, so I'm going to pause and I'm going to finish up and then we'll come back. Okay, so now I'm back. I went ahead and kind of finished out the nails, kind of got the skin tone changed up a little bit. And this is kind of what I'm looking at right here. Now, one thing I wanted to also cover real quick was importing your own brushes. Again, if we take a look at, for example, if I go here to my fingernails under the brushes where we put this in, we don't have a lot of brushes on here. Now there are, I believe, on the online, if you go to brush, there are a bunch of brushes that you can import from here, okay? And you can import quite a few things, it looks like. So you can look through here and see if you find something that you like, and you can download it, and then you can import it, kind of the way I'm about to show you. But you can also import brushes from the internet using like the Photoshop stuff. So this site, Brush Easy, has a lot of free brushes that you can download. Now you can also use these for your Photoshop projects as well, or for GIMP probably. And then what I'm going to use is I downloaded this lightning one here, okay? And this is kind of what I got right here, these two, lightning and lightning 2. And I'm going to try to use these to put a surface on the back of the hand, kind of like maybe some veining on the back of the hand. We'll see how this will look, okay? So how do we import these? So if I go back to viewport, and what I'm going to do first, instead of working with the hand one, I'm going to, or with the fingernail ones, I'm going to go back to the hand here, and I'm going to add a solid layer. There it is. Okay, we're going to add a solid layer, and I'm going to go ahead and probably stick it down here under color variation. And what we do want to do instead is down here is another way of adding it. And if we hold the Alt button and click on this little squiggly line square box here, it's going to add a solid layer. It's going to add the black color in, which neutralizes that color completely, okay? And now I've got this paint mask that has nothing added to it. It's at the very top of my silicone skin one, and right now it's this kind of gray. So I'm going to select this, and what I want to do is I'm going to add a little bit of veining. So I'm going to click the little circle here. I'm going to go around until I kind of find this blue hazy color kind of thing that kind of matches what skinning color might kind of be. And we may have to play around with this a little bit. We're going to start with that. I'm going to hit apply. I've got that color now. So I'm going to select the mask. And once the paint mask comes up, again, here are our brush presets, right? If we go down to brush shape and hover over this circle, I can click on that, okay? And that opens up this little folder so I can go and find my brushes that I have. And I've saved this brush on my M drive. I have this one called brushes, not a lot in it right now. And I'm going to select this one right here, and I'm going to go ahead and open it. It may not work out well, but it's going to at least be there for me to kind of demo the concept here. So now I have this brush, and if I hover over, you can see that that's kind of what it is, right? It's kind of that shape. Now, I may need to play around with size and all this other stuff, my opacity, to kind of get the look I want. But to begin with, let's just go ahead and click on there and see what it looks like. And absolutely nothing happened because I need to be in the white down here. So I need to change my brush color to white. Now if I click on it, I kind of get this little kind of lightning thing going on in here, right? And I'm going to go ahead and Control Z that, undo it, maybe. Control Z doesn't always necessarily do what we think it should do. So I'm going to go ahead and go back and kind of undo this, or erase it maybe. And the wrong value. Paint it maybe. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and clear mask. There we go. And, whoops. Okay, by holding Alt, that's what I got there. That's not what I do because that affects the lower level. Wow, okay, so let's just delete that one. We'll start over. Wow, okay, so again, solid layer. I'm going to add a mask by holding Alt and click on it. It's going to give me that. And now I'm back to where I was. I think I'm going to go with the soft brush for this one. And again, I'm going to select my lightning thing here. I'm going to open on that. Select my color. Try to find a color that's a little bit more what I'm looking for. Maybe not so bright blue. Something like that. Okay. And kind of rotate this until I get the look I want. I can also rotate the angle of my brush. I'm going to try to kind of fit it right in this kind of area here, so maybe back a little bit more. Something like that maybe. And again, be in the right mode down here. Okay. It's really kind of bright, but we can now go ahead and go in and kind of play around with the opacity until it just sort of kind of blends down in there. It may not be exactly what we're looking for, but that's okay. It kind of gets us started. And now we can go back in and rotate these around. You can also bring in other brushes, kind of get those to change up a little bit too. You can change the sizing of it. You know, maybe it's kind of feeds in like this. So I think you kind of get the idea there. You can bring a brush in. You can kind of play around with it. You can also bring in other brushes. Maybe you want some skin blotches in here. So that was something else I had kind of brought in. Oh, shoot. We go back in. Open. All right, so we can save this brush. So now with it selected here, if we come up here, we can save the brush. We can give it a name. I'm just going to call that Lightning, because that's the only one I got in there. I'm going to save it. And there we go. Now you have that up in here. It's kind of hard to tell that it's lightning because it's such a small brush, but if you hover over it, it gives you a name. All right, so now I'm going to clear that out, and we're going to go back in. I'm going to grab the splatter one, hit open again on it. All right, so kind of the same kind of idea, except I don't want this one to be blue, and I don't want it to be on this one. So I'm going to select this again. I'm going to go ahead and add another solid layer. Okay. I'm going to pull this down into here for my skin tone here. And I'm going to put a paint mask on it. So hold the Alt button, select the paint mask. And now for the color, I'm going to go with sort of a darker, kind of like a skin blotchy color. So for brown, I'm going to go down back in here. And maybe something like that. We may have to apply the colors, but we'll see. All right. So this one, let's see, this one's going to be veins. And this one's going to be blotches. Okay. And with that selected, this brush selected, let's go ahead and just kind of see what we end up with. Maybe something like that. Don't forget we need to be in the value down here for the white color. And we can kind of just add some blotches in randomly, and we can change the angle on them so they're not the same over and over again. Okay. Kind of get that in there a little bit. So again, that's kind of how we start going here. Turn the fingernails back on. Just kind of take a look, see what we got here. All right, so now we've got all of this put together. So the last thing we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and just jump on over, show you how to export this as a bunch of textures, and probably in the next video, because this is kind of run over a lot longer than I intended it to. In the next video, I'll show you how to take these in, set up the materials, and then we'll render it out in the next video. All right. Okay, before we export this, we also want to make sure that we go back to our layers, double check to make sure we got the top layer selected, and we have both the hand and the fingernails turned on, and it looks correct. Okay, we want to make sure we have all of this looking correct. Otherwise, it may end up messing up our textures. So good. All right. So let's go ahead and export this. So we got everything all set up. I'm going to go to my export. Okay, and I'm going to want to export, and we're going to go to custom, and I'm going to determine where I want it to go. So this is going to go into my project for this particular hand. So this is going to be on my M drive. So let me find it. Okay. And into my projects for this year, this hand demo project. And I'm going to pick source images, and I'm going to create a new folder in here. And I'm just going to call this my hand left. Okay. And I'm going to select that folder, and it should change all that up into here. I am not going to export the model. I already have the model that I'm going to use in Maya, so I'm just going to ignore that. But if you needed to export the model, you could do that right here. And if you wanted to, you could change the format for the model. Down here, the texture presets. So we can either do it as metalness maps or specular maps. We're going to leave it as metalness maps. And with that selected, we're going to want our albedo, because that's the color. We're going to want our roughness. That's going to give us our kind of surface level textures. We're going to want our normals, because that's also going to feed into that for as far as the height maps and things like that. Displacements, we won't be using displacements on this one, so we're going to uncheck that. AOs we can use, and the metalness we can use. And the texture sets that we want both the hand and the fingernail texture sets. So we're going to go ahead, and down here we can change from 256 to, I'm going to change it to 2048, because that's what we've been working with. And I'm going to export this to my disk. Okay. All right. And let's go back into our folder, which I seem to have lost again. And demo project, into our source images. Hand left, which is what we called it, and into here. And again, here is our albedo for our fingernails, and or also known as base color. And then here is the one for our hand, and everything looks correct. We have our roughness for the fingernails, which should give us kind of a smooth surface, and everything looks pretty good. All right. I save my current project. Okay, I'm going to save it just in case I need to come back to it. And while that's saving, I'm going to go ahead and jump back in here and say, well, that's kind of it for this video. Sorry that it went so long and I didn't quite get to putting the materials back into Maya and do the rendering. I'm going to save that for another day. This will give you something to work on and get the texturing done. And then you can kind of see what your hand looks like here in the viewport, and we'll get it back into Maya. If you already know how to do the materials on Maya and you don't need me to show you, certainly knock yourself out and do that. Otherwise, I will have a video to follow up on this one and show you how to take the textures and apply them as a material in Maya, and then we'll do the rendering. Hopefully that'll be a much shorter video, and we can kind of take a look and see what our hand looks like. All right, so again, if you missed previous videos, you're interested in watching them, please go to Putting on the Fritz 3D Visualization, subscribe to my channel, like this video, like any other videos that you like as well, and kind of check out some of my other content. I will see you next time.